Basic self-awareness is such an important tool for helping us to live lives that are really intentional and free. And that is because all of us have ideas, responses, ways of living that we really take for granted and we're not aware of. And the more we can start to track our attitudes or our responses to different people or situations, the more we can decide how we want to act very deliberately. And we can choose which attitudes or ways of being we want to keep as like really beneficial or really helpful in our lives, and which ones we maybe want to let go of or change. And a very useful tool for helping to develop this kind of self-awareness can be personality tests. And that's something I've found for myself in my own life. So today I want to break down the Myers Briggs personality test. I'm going to talk about how the test is structured, what the different categories are, so that for anyone who's curious, you can try and figure out what your own personality type might be. I also wanted to break it down in this video rather than just giving a link to a test, because I found for myself, and I know a lot of other people have, that taking the test, especially the easy ones you can find online, is only so reliable. And I think this is for a lot of reasons. A really good version of the test usually costs money. It takes a long time. It's just much more thorough than the ones that you'll find for free online. But also, it's based on self-reporting. So again, if you're not doing a really thorough listing, it can be hard for us to understand exactly what the question's asking, and also hard for us to completely take our ego and our perception of ourselves out of the equation. And so we'll end up answering in ways that we think the test wants or that we think are right, and it's just hard to be objective about ourselves. So for myself, when I've taken the test, it gives me results that I just don't feel are accurate, right? But what I like doing is understanding the letters and being able to say, okay, no, I tend towards this one for sure, and I tend towards this one for sure, and then I could kind of type myself, or at least get like 2 or 3 types that I was pretty sure I was one of those. And then I would Google those 2 or 3 types and find one that really resonated with me. And that's what I've done for my life. And it's been a really helpful tool in helping me understand some of my strengths and weaknesses and my tendencies in relationships with different people or in different circumstances. Which brings me to my next point. I really want to emphasize that personality tests are a tool and nothing more. They will not solve your life problems in any way. They won't solve anything. They'll just give you data. And also, they're not a box. They're not a constrictive, like, you are now confined to being this type of person. No psychologist would claim that they have the tools to encapsulate everything about a person. Not by a long shot. Myers Briggs is structured in such a way that there are 16 types, and there are far more than 16 people in the world. My hope is that if you decide to work on this project, or you've taken a personality test before, that you've been able to find elements, some feedback from it that was helpful for you. It's not going to give you all the answers. It's literally just a tool. But it's been very helpful for me, so I wanted to share this with you guys today for anyone who hasn't already tried it. I picked Myers Briggs partly because my father has a master's in psych. He's a school counselor and a teacher, and it's the one that he studied in school, so I was really exposed to it as a kid. I'm very used to Myers Briggs. I understand how it works. It's also it's just a solid test. It was actually developed back in 1942 by Isabel Briggs-Meyer and her mother, Catherine Briggs, which I think is kind of a cool story. And they did so much research and so many studies in developing it. They were looking for a tool that would help categorize people for work, like which kinds of people might be prone to move into this work industry and which types of people might go to this work industry, and then for inner dynamics within the office and improving communication. And it's gone on to be really well developed and accepted as a very useful tool in psychology. I'll include a link for that to anyone who wants to hear a little bit more about the history and how it was developed. With that said, let's get into the actual test. How does Myers Briggs work, and what are the different categories? So the test is structured with 4 categories, and in each category there are 2 options. So you will be A or B in all of these categories, theoretically, and we'll just go through one category at a time. So the first one is I versus E for introvert versus extrovert, and this is the most well understood, I think. It's become kind of common language today. We talk about being an introvert or an extrovert, but let me break it down all the same. So an introvert will tend to have quiet energy. They listen more easily than they talk. They tend to think before they act, and they enjoy being alone. An extrovert is very high energy. They tend to talk more easily. They like to act, then think, and they enjoy being in crowds. So this is interesting, and it's really important to remember that all of these are on a spectrum. So it's rare that you'll find anyone who falls absolutely into one or the other, though I have a couple of friends who are like deep extroverts, and it's crazy to me. But generally, introverts are people who will get more energy from being alone, right? They like to be kind of more quiet and reserved. They probably won't throw themselves into as many like crowded or exciting situations. Extroverts kind of crave that, right? They love to be around a lot of people. They're often kind of in the middle of the party. And another way I like to think of it is that extroverts like a lot of stimulus often. Introverts don't. They tend to be a little more sensitive. I'm actually an introvert, and that surprises a lot of people because I love teaching and performing, but I get my energy from being alone. If I don't have a couple hours every day to be by myself, I get irritated, I feel frustrated. Going to parties is kind of work for me. So again, to emphasize that it's on a spectrum and it might be a little hard for you to decide which one you are. So think generally, how do you get your energy? And that will give you a pretty good idea of whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Next is sensors or intuitives. And sensors like details and facts, so you can imagine someone who likes to use their senses, literally. They appreciate practical solutions, they trust experience, and they focus on the present. Intuitives like big picture and possibilities. They tend towards having creative ideas, they like to trust their gut, and they focus on the future. So here you can think kind of classically in terms of like who's maybe the scientist and who's the crazy artist. The sensors want things to be really practical and tangible. They're focused on the here and now, like what is going on in the world in front of me. Whereas intuitives are off kind of maybe prone to daydreaming. They're thinking of the future. They're coming up with creative, interesting ideas. I'm definitely an intuitive, and this is good and bad. It helps me tremendously in the work I do as an artist and a performer. It also is part of why I tend to be kind of an anxious person, because I'm thinking about the future all the time. S's have an easier time being like, well, that's not in front of me right now, so why would I worry about it? Right? So you can see a little bit pros and cons of both. But generally, N's are looking for big picture and possibilities. S's are looking for practical, what's in front of them right now. And next we have F for feelers, or T for thinkers. And this one, people jump to feeling like offended if they're a feeler. Wow. People can jump to feeling offended if they get F for feeler, as if it means they're like really irrational. That's not what it means. We'll break it down. So F's do tend to decide based on their feelings. They are very warm and friendly. They really value harmony and compassion, and they seek appreciation. Whereas thinkers tend to be more objective in their decision making. They can be very cool and reserved. They value honesty and fairness, and they seek achievement more than appreciation. So this one actually breaks up pretty clearly, I feel like. Feelers tend to be very empathetic, so they have a pretty good idea of what's going on for other people in the room, and they really care, right? So this makes them, again, it makes sense that they're very kind, warm, compassionate people. They're great at caring for others. They tend to be more approachable and easy to talk to, and this goes hand in hand with them having a hard time with conflict. Feelers don't like to get into arguments with people because they're feeling the unpleasantness potentially for themselves and for the other person. They tend to be kind of aware of both at once, and that makes it really hard. Thinkers can be much more, they want to get down to brass tacks, right? They don't have necessarily as much time for waffling around or being unsure of what to do because someone's feelings might get hurt. They really want to be clear. They want to be honest about the situation. And if there's something that's causing trouble, they want to talk about it and deal with it. And this is an interesting letter for me because I feel like I swing very much towards the middle of this one. I am very compassionate and warm, and I think literally I think I test is actually an F, but I have such a strong tendency towards having those uncomfortable conversations with people because I can't stand knowing that something is a problem and isn't settled. If it's going to keep being an issue and this person's going to keep being in my life, I want to clean it up. I want to talk about it. So that's been an interesting one for me, and again, I want to emphasize you may have a hard time with some of these letters. They may not catch you perfectly, and that's okay. So for myself then, what I do when trying to type myself is I would list out both. I think I am an INF, and I also might be an INT, and then I would add in the last letter, and I would search for both of them. I would Google both of them and just see which one is giving me more useful feedback. Okay, then our last letter we have perceivers for P or judgers for J. And again, sometimes people associate that judgers are bad. No, totally unrelated context. Let's get into what it means. So perceivers tend to keep their options open. They tend to be more playful and casual. They love to start new projects. They tend to question rules, and they like to be really spontaneous. Whereas judgers like to have things set. They take their responsibilities very seriously. They like to finish projects, and they appreciate rules and like things to be scheduled. So this one has to do right with the way you like to approach work, projects, or even activities for fun. So perceivers, again, think of the word perceiving. They like to feel what the mood is, like what's the vibe. They don't want to be locked into something the day before because they won't know how they feel about it come the day of. So if you have a friend maybe who, when you ask them if they want to hang out, they're not sure, like that they'll want to, they're more likely to tell you the day of, oh my gosh, I'm in a good mood, like let's go do this thing. They're probably a perceiver. A judger likes things to be organized and planned out. They enjoy structure. I am a J. This helps me in my work directing and teaching. I like things to be organized and laid out. I want to have a clear trajectory for how we're going to get things done and make success. I have a hard time sometimes working with perceivers because I feel like they're wasting time, whereas they feel like they're open to finding the best option, right? So you can see real pros and cons in both. This shows how the test is useful if you're looking for what kind of maybe work you want to be doing. Perceivers will have a hard time in a strict office setting. They might not really thrive there. And judgers can make really good managers and being like in charge of groups of people. That's pretty much it. Those are the 4 types. So to sum up really briefly, you have introverts versus extroverts. Do you gain your energy more from being alone or from being with other people? We have sensors and intuitives. Do you prefer really being in touch with things tangibly and living in the present? Or are you a little bit more of dreamer and a creative, you like looking towards the future? We have feelers and thinkers. Are you very warm and empathetic, very sensitive to other people's feelings and averse to conflict? Or are you a little more reserved and calculated? You like things to be very clear and you want to get down to brass tacks right away. And finally, we have perceivers and judgers. Do you like to keep your options open, be really flexible, wait and see what the best option is in the moment? Or do you like to have things planned and organized? You want to know where you're going before you get there. I hope this has been helpful and that you can kind of work your way through the letters a little bit and see which one might fit well for you. I will absolutely put a link below with my favorite site for reading about the different types. You can take a personality test there as well. It's very cute. Every type gets a little cartoon. I'm a cartoon wizard. Very nice. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found some of this content useful. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.